Alright, I played a really good game of chess today, and I just wanted to share it. Um, as you can see, I'm black here. This is a 5-minute game. I switched to a little bit longer games. Speed kills. I've been playing too many fast games. So this is a 5-minute game. Alright, pawn to king 4. So pawn to queen bishop 4, that's a Sicilian defense. Alright, that's normally that's the beginning of a closed Sicilian. That's normal. That's my normal answer to it. That's pretty normal, just normal development. Alright, so my idea here is I want to fianchetto this bishop on this long black diagonal. It looks pretty juicy. It's all still pretty normal. Alright, white comes out with the bishop to c4. That's always a pretty good spot for the bishop. I put my bishop there where I talked about. White castles, that's normal. I play pawn to queen 3. Just kind of strengthening my center, open up some spot for my white bishop. Also another playable move would have been knight to f6. Alright, so white plays d3. This is a closed Sicilian. It's a Sicilian defense, but as you know, no pawns have been exchanged yet. The board hasn't opened up, so it's called a closed Sicilian. And it's my turn. Knight to f6. That's, you know, normal development. Rook to e1. Looks pretty normal. I castle. So development, both sides are developing pretty well. Everything, you know, looks pretty natural here. All right, white bounces his knight backwards. What white's trying to do here is relocate that knight to the king side and then launch a king side attack against me. All right, so he moved his knight there. He's trying to move it over to the king side. Well, I kind of like the looks of that, so I get my white bishop out there to kind of put some threats, you know, against the knights. You know, right before he moved that knight, I had been thinking about that move, moving this white bishop up here and pinning the knight against the queen. So he put a knight in the way, and I just went ahead with the move I was planning on making anyway. All right, so that's, like I said, he's trying to relocate his knight, which he's done a pretty good job of. He got the knight where he wants it. Of course, his other knight is now pinned against the queen, but still not really a bad position. It's my turn. Moving that rook to, what is that, c8 there, just because that's a pretty normal file for the rook. That was the first pawn that I moved and advanced it out there, so you can imagine that, you know, all in all, my strategy is to kind of progress down that line, and I'm going to want a rook backing up that file. All right, so it's white's move, and he tries to kick my bishop. No problem there, but of course, anytime you move those pawns in front of your king, you're starting to create weaknesses. But I backed up. I'm okay with that. And now he plays pawn to queen 4. That move seems a little awkward, you know, but you know, it's not a game losing move, but that begins to open up the Sicilian. All right, so pawn captures pawn. Now that file's open. Remember, like I was just talking about, why did I put that rook on c8? Well, now we can see why. Now it begins to get some scope. And then white plays knight captures pawn there. That's kind of normal. And it's my turn. Let's see what I'm going to play. Okay. Alright, so my plan here is to play a6, move that pawn, and then the pawn next to it, I want to play b5 and kind of gain a little bit of space and kick his bishop out of the way. So that's why I played this move. It's his turn. He plays, you know, whatever that is, a3. Probably trying to keep my knight from bouncing into b4 there. It's kind of a defensive move, a prophylactic move, if you will. So it's my turn. I continue with my plan b5. This, you know, begins to drive away his bishop. He backs his bishop up. Now, I put this knight on the edge here. It threatens to play knight captures bishop. And, you know, it looks kind of awkwardly placed on the rim there. It is guarded by the queen, but I like the idea that it's threatening this bishop. And then, you know, if the bishop does move away, I can also bounce the knight out to this good-looking post here. You know, if he moves away, then I can also bounce this knight to here. And it's a pretty strong post, the c4 square. The knight can actually be driven off by b3, but nonetheless, I like the looks of that spot for my knight. I don't know if I can back that up. This is just kind of an analysis screen. So this is the actual position on the board. What's the computer give us up top here? Minus 0.3, so that means the position is slightly better for black. Alright, so let's go out of this screen and back into the game screen. Let me get back to where I need to be. Okay, so it's white's move. He retreats his bishop. It's kind of what I thought he'd do. And then I bounce my knight just like I talked about and put it on this c4 square, and of course it's backed up by a pawn here, and then you get the rook down here on the c8 square. So it's white's move. Now white does try to kick this knight out of the way, successfully here with this pawn move, but what he's also done is he's blocked in his own white bishop. I mean, it's literally going nowhere. So I'm trying to think how I can take advantage of that. My bishop has got a lot of room, and I'm thinking all things are pretty equal, except his bishop is really shut down. What can I do to, exploit my advantage? So first I got to get this knight out of the way, which is no problem. I bounce it back to the center of the board where it's going to have some control and a lot of options. And then white plays bishop to d2. He's just trying to continue with his development. It's my turn. And I like this move. I play queen to b6 here. As you can see up on this diagonal, the queen could, on my next move, I could play queen captures knight there. And, and get a knight, and get a free knight. So we'll have to see what white does in answer to that. And he moves his bishop, which is a pretty good move. Now I'm kind of worried about this discovered attack on my queen. So I back my queen up, all right? I back my queen up, and also at the same time now, as you can see, get my little drawing board out here. So by backing my queen up, right now I'm also eyeing this pawn of his, which isn't very well protected. He's got this knight over here protecting it, but I've also got my knight that's threatening this. So right now, white has to come up with some sort of plan to protect this pawn, because otherwise I'm going to play knight captures pawn, and then if he wants to play knight captures knight, that's fine. I'll recapture with my queen. And that's good for me. It wins a pawn. And then also, because I've got this bishop fianchetto down here, once I start to get these pieces out of the way, this bishop's going to become more and more powerful, and it's also sneaking an attack on this rook down here. So let's see how things go. All right, so I backed my queen up, and white plays rook to c1. I don't know if he didn't see this weakness on e4, that pawn I was talking about, or what. So he plays rook to c1, which is okay with me, so I bounce in there and take the pawn that I just mentioned. He takes my knight, and I take his knight, just like the little diagram I just drew. So things are looking pretty good for me. Let's see what the computer calls this. Take a quick analysis. If you look at the score up here, minus 0, minus 1, minus 0.9, you know what I mean? So this game's, I just won a pawn, so of course it's about 1 point in my favor. So the game's looking pretty good for black here. So let's go back to the game. Bing, 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 bing. Knight. Okay, so here's where we're at. And now it's white's turn, and we're going to see what he does. He moves his bishop. I kind of figured he would. So by moving that bishop, he's now got a discovered attack on my queen, right? If I don't do something, he's going to play rook captures queen and take my queen. So here is where I begin to kind of hatch this little plan. Let's get my board back. All right, so what I'm starting to think about here is I like the idea of sliding this bishop up here and taking this pawn. Alright, that's a sacrifice. Bishop captures pawn, because of course then this pawn is going to take it. Alright, but then I'm going to start to create weaknesses around the enemy king. I already know this guy over here is not doing nothing. This guy's not doing nothing. White's pieces are kind of trapped in this quadrant. They're not doing a whole lot to defend his king. And I'm thinking, boy, if I can start to strip away some of the defenders of this king, I really got a powerful attack. I got my queen on this big diagonal. you know, I got an open file here. I got this file's about to come open. You know, things are looking pretty good for me. So, you know, now it's going to be my turn, and what's going to happen is Black has just moved this bishop here, and what he's threatening is, if you can see, he's threatening to take this pawn. It's not guarded by anything. All right, so what I'm going to do is retreat my queen back to here, and then if he takes that pawn, that's fine with me. I'm going to play my sacrifice. Bishop captures pawn. All right, then maybe he plays pawn captures bishop, and since this bishop won't be in the way, right, it's not going to be here. My queen is going to be over here. His bishop's going to be here. So now bishop captures pawn, and then I got too many lines on the board. So my bishop captures that pawn. His bishop captures this pawn, and then my queen's here. And now I'm going to be able to take his bishop and, you know, kind of even up material, and I'm liking the looks of that. So let's see how that goes before I get too deep into things here. All right, so I retreat my queen, like I said, back to b7. I guess he's trying to open up the, you know, give his bishop a little bit of breathing room there. He plays b4, and now I go ahead with my plan. But before I do that, I also like the looks of this move. I just thought this was an absolutely beautiful move across the board. Rook to c3, because now, you know, like I said, you know, what I want to do, let me get my drawing board out. You know, I still have this plan of wanting to do this, and now by bringing this rook up, now the rook starts to take control over here, right? So now if I play bishop captures pawn and do this, and then maybe he plays pawn captures pawn, now I can play rook over to here, capturing this pawn, and I'm going to have, you know, even more room around this king. Let me take this into a, oops. You know, so my plan is maybe he plays this, right? And then I play this, and he plays this, and I can play this, and, you know, so maybe he plays this, you know, and I play this, right? Let's back that up and see it again. So by lifting my rook up, I'm really reinforcing this attack on the pawns around White's king. This is just what I'm thinking. All right. So what I want to happen is I'm thinking he's going to play his dark square bishop's going to capture this pawn, and then I'm going to do my little bishop sacrifice over here, and then he's going to take my bishop, and I'm going to take his bishop. You know, something like that. And now, you know, without going into a big deep analysis, you know, you can see that there's a lot of openings around his king, right? So now I'm starting to make threats like queen to g5, right? Check. And you know, I got the threat of this rook coming over here and taking this pawn, and then, but you know, there's nobody here to defend the king. All right, so that's my plan. That's my plan. And I don't want to get too deep into that. So let's back up to the game. And where are we at? Okay, so there's the rook move I just made. I was really impressed with that move. Now the computer analysis is, as you can see, rook to c3. All right. I don't know if it'll let me play it. Rook to e3, I'm sorry. So the computer's telling White he needs to move this rook right here. Whoops. The computer's telling White to move that rook to right there. And that's, you know, his best defense. But White doesn't play that move. All right, let's back up a little bit. Let's get back to the game. All right, there's my rook lift to rook to c3. Really loving that move. So on with the show. White, not sure what the heck he's thinking here. What is he thinking? He backs this knight up. I really don't know what he's thinking there. I don't. Oh, I know what he's thinking. See, if you look up here to the right of my rook, one of the other advantages of me putting my rook there is it threatens this pawn over here by the bishop. You know, one of the other advantages of this move is that this rook is threatening to take this pawn, which isn't guarded. All right, so white, you know, plays this move and puts his knight here to try to block it. And he doesn't maybe sense the danger of what's coming on the other side. So, you know, he moves his knight back there, blocking in his white squared bishop again. Now it's showtime. All right, bishop captures pawn. All right. I'm thinking he's going to recapture, and I'm really loving my position at this. Let's see what the computer thinks. What's the computer analyze this position at? Minus 12.82. That's just like, you know, things are looking good for me. Back it up a little bit. All right, so bam, there's my sacrifice. I plan on sacrificing that bishop to just rip open the king's position. White doesn't fall for that. He says, hey, I'm not going to fall for that. And he plays f3 there to try to block my rook. That's his plan. So I'm thinking, you know what? I already planned on sacrificing that bishop. If you don't want to take it, I'm just going to take another piece with the bishop. I'm just going to take another piece like that. There you go. Right? So now I've taken another defender away from the king. I've already given up this bishop thinking it was going to get captured anyway. So now he plays king captures bishop. And it's just starting to look ugly here. It's just really starting to look ugly. It's, you know, there's a lot of pressure on this square, right? The rook is hitting this square, the queen is hitting this square, and my knight is hitting this square. All right? A lot of bad stuff is, you know, can happen here. You can just imagine. I'm really kind of wanting to play knight captures pawn, and then he can't really recapture with his queen because I'll take him, you know. And if the knight captures a pawn, then the knight's going to be threatening this rook and this bishop at the same time. It's just a beautiful setup. So, right, he just played king captures bishop, and now it's my turn, and knight captures pawn. This is just beautiful. And what I'm loving about this more is this guy's ranked a little higher than me. All right, so he just doesn't have a lot of options, you know. What's the computer think he should play? The computer says the best move is king to f1. It's up there at the top. But still, it's heavily in my favor. All right, so knight captures pawn. He's going to either lose a bishop or a rook one way or another, right? And keep in mind that if I move this knight, it's also going to allow my queen to come down into his territory there, right? It's just going to slide right on down this. As soon as this knight moves, now the queen is just going to have an open line into his space, and the rook's going to come over here, and this bishop's going to start coming into play. It's just getting ugly for white, you know. It's just a beautiful setup. So what happens here? Nope. All right, so he you know, he finally just decides, look, I'm just going to, I don't know if he forgot about this rook or what, but he chooses to play queen captures knight. It's just not going to work, so rook captures knight. The computer actually suggested that for me to play queen captures queen and that was a stronger move, but it's pretty much over here, right? I mean, rook captures queen, and now black is his position's in shambles. You know, he's got no defenders around his king, no pawns around his king, and my pawn structure's rock solid. And he just resigned here. I mean, it's like, you know, what are you going to do? What's the analysis say? Minus 16, right? So that means it's way good for black. You know, the best move is knight to d2, and it's just going to get ugly. Rook to f5 for me. And, you know, maybe knight to e4 to try to block that. And, you know, now I'm just going to take the bishop. The knight can't take it because it's pinned. You know, king to f3 is what the computer says. Rook to f5 is check. King to g2. You know, rook to f4, threatening to take the knight. Rook on c to d1. There's just not much going on here. Rook captures e4. Bishop, it's just... You know, rook to g4 check. It's just not going to work out very well for him. Now, you know, so you can see, you know, by using the analysis system here, the computer, how everything would work out had the game continued. You know, now here comes my bishop to d4 check. Rook captures d4, rook captures d4. There's still a lot of moves. Oh, whose move is it? I'd say king to g3, you know, queen to f5. And you know, it's just getting uglier. Now, if you look in the top here, it starts saying mate in 9. You know, I mean, there's just a mating sequence is coming. Rook to d1, rook to h4. Let's see why that's a good move. Am I reading that right? Why is that a good move? So, queen captures f3. You know, I mean, so just on and on. I mean, you know, it's just a pretty much one position there. So, you know, white resigned right there. You know, so just a really good move. We'll back it up real quick. Sicilian, you know, closed Sicilian, normal development, fianchettoed my bishop. Everything's normal. I mean, I haven't analyzed the whole game, I don't think, or did I? Actually, I did. So we'll see what the computer thinks. Down here at the bottom, you can kind of see the computer will say, you know, when it found better moves. This was all normal, just beginning setup. I castled. I don't know why that won't move itself forward. Knight to e2, bishop to g4. There's my rook to c8, h3, bishop to d7. Now if you look here at the bottom, white plays d4. He plays this move, you know, but the computer says a better move was a4. You know, he should have played a4. And there's a little bit of analysis there. I'll kind of scroll through that slowly in case anybody's interested in really digging into it and looking through it. You know, of course, I look through it, but I don't have time to go through all those lines now. But, you know, just I really liked that game. I gotta tell you, I was really impressed with my move right here. When I played this move with the rook, I just thought that was a beautiful move, and I just had to share it. All right, thank you. Let me get to the stop button here, wherever it is. There we go.